August 2016, in Rio de Janeiro, Neymar scored the winning penalty that gave Brazil its first ever Olympic gold medal in football on home soil in front of a nation that had waited generations for exactly that moment, finally erasing the memory of 3 previous Olympic finals lost. That same month, in that same city, a 22-year-old Brazilian gymnast who had spent years building toward his own home Olympics wasn't on the roster at all. He watched it happen from the outside, the way millions of other Brazilians did, without the vantage point of an athlete village or a stadium seat. His name is Caio Souza, and 3 years later, he became the first Brazilian gymnast in history to win an individual all-around gold medal at the Pan American Games, a title no Brazilian man had ever claimed before him. Across every previous edition of a competition that had been contested for decades, he's still competing today, at an age when most elite gymnasts have already retired, still chasing the one Olympic result that's eluded him across 3 separate game cycles, each one ending differently but always short of the medal he's actually after. We'll get to exactly how close and exactly how far that chase has taken him. First, you need to know where it started with a kid in Volta Redonda who found gymnastics completely by accident, walking past a gym on his way somewhere else. Caio Souza was born on the 12th of September 1993 in Volta Redonda, a steel industry city in Rio de Janeiro state, with no real gymnastics tradition to speak of, a place better known for its manufacturing than for producing international athletes in this specific sport. His introduction to organized sport didn't even start with gymnastics. At first, she sent me to karate because my brother was involved in the sport, Souza later explained, describing how his mother enrolled him. I was very little and had no one to fight with. I kept on climbing the walls and stuff like that. When we walked by a gym, I went in and did some jumps. That's where my gymnastics career started. It's about as unglamorous an origin story as elite sport produces. A kid with too much energy for karate, no sparring partner his own size, and a chance walk past a building that happened to have the right equipment inside. There was no family legacy in the sport, no early scouting, nothing that marked Souza as a future national champion. Just a restless kid and an open door, and a coach willing to let him try a few jumps on the spot. Souza's early international career built gradually rather than exploding onto the scene, the kind of slow accumulation of results that rarely makes headlines but eventually adds up to a genuine career. He debuted on the World Cup circuit at the 2013 Cottbus World Cup in Germany and represented Brazil at the 2014 Pan American Championships and that year's World Championships, where the Brazilian team finished 6th, a respectable if unremarkable result for a program still developing its depth on the men's side. He continued competing through the mid-2010s at World Cup stops in Anadia, Osijek, and Sao Paulo, picking up individual apparatus finishes in the 4th through 7th range solid, competitive results, but nowhere near the podium yet. The kind of steady accumulation of experience that rarely gets written about in real time, logged quietly in results sheets rather than headlines. Drop a comment below. Did you know Caio Souza's gymnastics career began with him getting bored waiting to spar in a karate class? 2016 should have been the defining year of Souza's career. Up to that point, Brazil's first Olympic Games as host nation in his own country, with a home crowd behind every Brazilian athlete who made the team, the kind of once-in-a-career opportunity most gymnasts never get. It wasn't. Souza did not qualify for the Rio Olympic roster, missing out on a games held in the exact city and country where he'd built his entire career. To make matters worse, in April of that year, he was hospitalized for 8 days due to the H1N1 flu virus, a serious illness that struck during exactly the stretch of the calendar when Olympic qualification pressure was at its highest, a physical setback stacked directly on top of the disappointment of missing selection. While Neymar led the Brazilian men's football team to that historic gold medal in the same city that same month, becoming a symbol of a nation's first football gold on home soil, Souza was recovering from a hospital stay and watching an Olympics he'd spent years preparing for happen entirely without him. It's the kind of gap between two athletes representing the same country in the same summer that never makes it into a highlight reel. One becomes a national hero overnight, remembered every time that Olympic cycle gets replayed. The other goes back to training, still chasing the exact same 5 rings from the outside, with no guarantee he'd ever get another chance at all. Souza kept climbing. At the 2018 World Championships in Doha, Qatar, he finished 13th in the all-around and helped the Brazilian team place 7th genuine progress. a gymnast now firmly inside the sport's upper middle tier rather than an afterthought, closing the gap on the field year by year. Then, in May 2019, he underwent surgery to remove osteophytes, bone spurs, from his left ankle, a procedure that would have derailed the season for a less determined competitor, especially given how much stress gymnastics places on that exact joint with every single landing. He recovered in time to compete at that summer's Pan American Games in Lima, Peru, just months later. An unusually fast turnaround from a surgery involving the exact joint that absorbs the impact of nearly every gymnastics landing, a recovery timeline his own medical staff would have called aggressive. By this point, Souza had become a member of the Brazilian Air Force's high-performance athlete program, a formal arrangement that gave him the institutional support to train up to 6 hours a day, the kind of structured, funded environment that had been missing entirely from his accidental start in a Volta Redonda gym years earlier. He'd named fellow Brazilian gymnasts Diego Hipólito and Arthur Zanetti, both Olympic medalists, as his own inspirations years earlier. The exact kind of career he was still chasing for himself, two names whose podium moments he could only watch from home in 2016. Lima, Peru, the 2019 Pan American Games, the individual all-around final. Souza, competing less than 3 months removed from ankle surgery, delivered across all 6 apparatuses against a strong regional field that included plenty of gymnasts with no such recent surgery to work around. When the scores were finalized, he'd won gold, becoming the first Brazilian gymnast in history to claim the individual all-around title at the Pan American Games, a distinction that had never belonged to any Brazilian man before him, across every previous edition of the Games stretching back decades. He kissed the medal on the podium, visibly emotional, the culmination of a journey that had started with a bored kid wandering into a gym and now included a genuine continental title. Brazilian sports media covering the moment noted that Souza was joining an elite tier of Brazilian gymnastics stars Arthur Zanetti, Arthur Nori, Rebecca Andrade, all Olympic and world medalists, a group Souza had spent his entire career trying to earn a place beside, and had now, at least by this one measure, finally reached. Drop a comment below. Did you know it took until 2019 for any Brazilian man to win an individual all-around gold at the Pan American Games, and Caio Souza was the one who finally did it? The delayed 2020 Tokyo Olympics finally gave Souza his first Olympic Games at 26 years old, 5 years after his home Olympics had passed him by entirely, a wait that spanned nearly a third of his life at that point. He finished 17th in the all-around and 8th in the vault final, a genuine Olympian at last, competing at the sport's biggest event, but not yet the medal he'd told FIG interviewers years earlier was his ultimate goal, the one result still missing from a resume that already included plenty of continental hardware. He kept building afterward, rather than winding down. At the 2022 World Championships in Liverpool, the Brazilian team placed 7th. At the 2022 Pan American Championships, held in his own country in Rio de Janeiro, Souza successfully defended his senior men's all-around title, outscoring American Yul Moldauer and Canada's Felix Dolce, both established international competitors in their own right. In 2023, at the World Challenge Cup in Osijek, Croatia, he won more medals than anyone else in the men's competition: gold on horizontal bar, silver on vault, bronze on still rings, and bronze on parallel bars, 4 medals in a single meet, becoming the first Brazilian gymnast in history to medal on every single apparatus across FIG World Cup competition over the course of a career. "We just finished our participation in the Artistic Gymnastics World Cup, and it was undoubtedly a competition that will remain in my memory," Souza said afterward. "I am very happy to return with 4 medals and having led Brazil to the top of the podium." He set his sights explicitly on Paris 2024 from there, hoping the Santiago 2023 Pan American Games would pave the way toward what he called his ultimate dream, an Olympic medal. It didn't happen. Souza did not qualify for the Paris Olympic team, missing the Games he'd spent the better part of a decade specifically building toward. For the second Olympic cycle out of 3, a disappointment that landed differently at 30 than it might have at 22. Here's what makes Caio Souza's story different from most. He didn't stop. At 32 years old, An age when the overwhelming majority of elite male gymnasts have long since retired, moved into coaching, or simply walked away from competitive training entirely, Souza was still competing at the 2026 Pan American Championships, still posting apparatus scores across parallel bars, still rings, vault, and horizontal bar, still representing Brazil on the international stage more than a decade after that karate class he never wanted to be in. His results that June showed a veteran still fully in the mix, solid marks across multiple apparatuses in both qualification and event finals, the kind of consistent output that comes from someone who has simply refused to let his career end on anyone else's timeline but his own. There's no record of Neymar ever commenting on Caio Souza directly. Different sports, different circles, no documented connection beyond the country they both represent, and the summer that split their two paths so sharply apart. What's real is the parallel that actually happened. In the exact same month, in the exact same city, in the exact same Olympic Games, one Brazilian athlete delivered the gold medal his sport had waited generations for, while the other missed the team entirely and spent that same August in a hospital bed instead of an Olympic village. Neymar's Rio 2016 goal is replayed every time Brazilian football highlights that Olympic cycle, shown on broadcasts and anniversary retrospectives for years afterward. Souza's absence from that same roster is the kind of footnote that never gets replayed at all, and yet he kept training, kept competing, kept building toward Tokyo, then toward Paris, then toward whatever comes next, long after the cameras had moved on to other stories entirely. A kid who found gymnastics because he was bored waiting to spar in karate class became the first Brazilian man to win an individual all-around Pan American Games gold, the first Brazilian to medal on every apparatus across the World Cup series, a Tokyo Olympian, and, at 32, still an active member of Brazil's national team, still logging scores at major international meets, while gymnasts, a decade younger than him, fight for the same roster spots. He never got his home Olympics in 2016. He never got Paris in 2024. Does Caio Souza, deep into his 30s, get one more shot at the Olympic medal that's defined his entire adult life? Drop your prediction in the comments. I read every single one. If this story hit you the way it hit me, hit subscribe, because Caio Souza still isn't done.